All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, with a record of 27 and 31, it's safe to say that the Los Angeles Lakers have been the biggest disappointment of this NBA season. The Lakers added a who's who of future Hall of Famers to their roster over the offseason as they were expected to be the team to beat for the NBA title. But through injuries and a lack of chemistry on the court, the Lakers find themselves holding on by a thread for a slot in the postseason, and there doesn't seem to be any relief in sight for this team. We saw the Lakers be dormant at the NBA's trade deadline. They did not make any moves. And then, of course, the injury to Anthony Davis earlier this week, which really puts this team in a bind. I mean, you think about Davis and you think about the contributions that he made to this team when they were able to win the NBA championship a couple of years ago. And I mean, even though that the Lakers did make some additions in the offseason, the likes of Carmelo Anthony, then of course Rajon Rondo, and of course Rondo has since been traded, Russell Westbrook, Deandre Jordan, and so many others. But nonetheless, AD and LeBron are the two main guys. Looks like I have my partner Cal Wonder God here joining us. Cal, can you hear me? Okay, Cal is having some technical difficulties right now, but I'm going to go back to him in a minute. But one thing I will talk about, the Lakers not being able to make any moves at the trade deadline. Cal, are you there?
Afternoon, should I say? How you doing today, bro?
Okay, how's it going? How's it going?
I'm all right, hanging in there.
All right, just like we had talked about, just talking about the Lakers and just talking about how this team has been such a big disappointment so far this year. Sub 500 record at the All Star break. This team has never been more than 3 games over 500 at any point of this season. They're currently ninth in the Western Conference, and for their sake, thank goodness for the play-in tournament because otherwise, finishing ninth, you'd be heading to the draft lottery. But with that said, this team has been a huge disappointment. There's talent there, but honestly, their flaws have been exposed so far this season. And of course, the injury to AD really is going to hamper their chances to make the playoffs. Cal, are you with me? Okay, we'll come back to Cal in one moment, but just getting back to this Anthony Davis injury for a short period of time. The injury, they're talking about 4 weeks, and the thing is just like you never know how these things are going to go. You never know how the body is going to react to that, and I think that's the biggest thing with AD right now. And I mean, honestly, it's 4 weeks, but for my money, I'm not sure at this point if the Lakers are going to have a fully healthy Anthony Davis going forward. Cal, your thoughts? All right, Cal's still having some technical difficulties. We're going to get him in here in one moment. But the thing is, I want to talk. A lot of people have been putting some blame with everything that's going on with the Lakers into the lap of Russell Westbrook. And my thing is this: it's like to me, the Lakers knew what they had when they went out and acquired Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook to me is not doing anything differently now than he was before throughout, his entire career, whether it was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, whether that was as a member of the Houston Rockets, whether it was a member of the Washington Wizards. Russell Westbrook is not a good perimeter shooter. He's not a good perimeter scorer. He's a guy that has to get to the basket, which is some of the same things that LeBron James does. And to me, when you look at Russell Westbrook's assist, I mean, he's a guy who gets a high volume of assists, but I put it in the category of it being empty calories because Russ does not make the people around him better. And you look at this team with LeBron, they're in win now mode. Of course, LeBron is at age 37, year number 19 in the NBA. It's not looking good for this squad. So Cal, hopefully we can get you in on this, man.
Okay, yeah, I think I had a little technical
Okay,
difficulties.
there
I
we go,
think
man.
I'm pretty good. And I think we're still experiencing some. So I will tell you this: if you can see me, this is what I have to say about it. Pretty much, the Lakers, the way the roster was constructed for this year, it's a flawed roster from beginning to end. Uh,
Yeah, no, like I agree. Excuse me, about the flawed aspect. It's a situation where
uh,
it's very top heavy.
yeah, the defenders that they had when they won in the bubble were not necessarily top notch, but they know how to play good team defense, and they weren't bad one on one, and they were physical. This team lacks physicality. Anthony Davis is he's injury prone, obviously, from what we see, and it's gotten worse since he's came to the Lakers. He's had some injury filled seasons when he was with the Pelicans. We all know that. I call him Mr. Twinkie feeling. I think he's a bit soft around the edges, but for me, everything starts with defense. Last year, they started out the year like in top 5 defensively, and then I think they gave up only 106 points a game towards the end of the year, but then they ended up being they're going from like top 5 to like maybe 11 for 12th. I think they finished this year. Let me take a look at this because I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. They're 19.
Yeah, I mean, right now the Lakers are actually 26th in points allowed in the NBA, and that's an improvement because
And
about
they're
a
also
week,
shooting, yeah, and they're
yeah,
shooting 34% from the 3-point line.
it's not going to get
You
it
know,
done.
the better teams are shooting 36, 37% as a team from 3-point. The Lakers have been since before LeBron came a historically awful 3-point shooting team. And I'm just going to be honest with you. And I don't like Frank Vogel's substitution patterns. I'm not going to blame it all on him because with this a collection of talent, they should be able to beat the teams that they should beat and be competitive with the teams that they should beat as well. Because I've seen teams they should beat where the Lakers just went and stepped into the closet and closed the door behind them. There's no sense of urgency. And what I'm hearing from Lakers Nation out there is that they could turn it on and turn it off when they feel like it.
Well, I look at it like this. There is, a belief of that notion. But the thing is, typically or generally speaking, when teams, and regardless of the sport, whenever they feel like they could just turn it on whenever they want to, eventually it's going to catch up to them. And I mean, I say that right now because let's just say the Lakers are able to advance and get out of the play-in tournament and get into the playoffs. More than likely, they're going to have to face the Phoenix Suns right now, the way things are. And you
Right.
look at the Suns are clearly the best team in the Western Conference. And the reason is they play team basketball. We've seen the difference that Chris Paul has made since he joined the Suns. You look at what Monty Williams has brought to the table as a head coach, and you look at this team. I mean, don't get me wrong, Devin Booker is a dynamic scorer, but when Devin Booker scores 30 points or less, meaning in that 20 to 29 range or 18 to 29 range, and other guys are getting involved, your Jay Crowders, your DeAndre Aytons, your Mikal Bridges, your Chris Pauls, and so forth, they win. And it's all about that balance. And on top of that, the Suns have great ball movement, but also they focus on the defensive end of the court. And that's what you need to win a championship. The Suns did not
Right.
get to the finals last year by accident. That was no aberration, and people need to understand that. And with that said, with the Lakers, I mean, you can't just have this notion where you could feel like you could just turn it on whenever you want to, because to your point, Cal, there is absolutely no reason why the Los Angeles Clippers should have a better record than the LA Lakers right now. And I mean, you figure the Clips have not had the services of Kawhi Leonard for the entire season. They probably won't. And Paul George has missed a good chunk of the season, and Paul George more than likely won't be back this season either. So you have a team of role players in the Clippers who actually have a better record than the Lakers. And to your point, man, it's that notion where we can turn it on whenever we want to. We're the Lakers, this, that, and the third. People do not fear this team, and you look at the way that their opponents are going after them. They're like, "Hey, let's just take it to these guys. Let's go out there and put the press on them, so to speak, at both ends of the court." The Lakers are not a good defensive team, and with the exception of their championship year, the Lakers have not been a good defensive team since LeBron has been in LA. You look at LeBron, and this goes back to his time in Cleveland. And I know some people are probably going to be upset by what I'm about to say, but LeBron has been lethargic at best on the
Right.
defensive end of the court. And typically, you cannot have that from your best players, especially one of the greatest players of all time. You cannot have that. I mean, we saw a few years ago when I think it was Kyle Kuzma who had to push LeBron into a defensive position, and you see it so often, even to this day. People are like, "Well, LeBron is saving it, at the offensive end of the court." But again, defensive basketball is something you just can't turn off and on when you want to. You got to go out there and you want to play good defense, because if you stop that opponent at their offensive end of the court, it's a psyche. It goes into their mindset and saying,
Right.
"Wow, you know what? We got to work a little harder to go out there and take care of our business on D." And to your point, there is absolutely no sense of urgency with the team right now.
Well, I'm gonna tell you just like this. I'm looking at the roster and the collection of guys they have. You have old legs. So if you look at Phoenix, technically, to me, Chris Paul is an older player, but he's able to keep up with those young leagues they got over there. You got DeAndre Ayton, who's averaging 16 points and 10 rebounds, and I think about 1.5 assists or something like that. And he is a rim protector. He's not averaging a lot of blocks, but the point is, he's a 7-footer with fresh legs.
Correct.
Then you got Devin Booker with fresh legs. He's a problem at the two. To my point, everybody got younger except the Lakers. The Lakers got older. And I had a friend of mine yesterday ask me a question. He says, "Well, what's wrong with Russ?" I said, the problem with Russ is that Russ is used to having the ball in his hands about 33% of the time. That's a high usage rate, and that's a high number for any player to have the ball in their hands. So now he goes from 33% down to about 25%, and then you got LeBron, who usually has the ball in his hands about 30 to 31% of the time, down to 27. So they're trying to figure out how to share the basketball, and Russ is trying to figure out where he fits in. This goes back to coaching, because if you look at it, they got Wayne Ellington, Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza, Kendrick Nunn, Malik Monk, Stanley Johnson, Austin Reeves, and that's the base of their team. All right, DeAndre Jordan, I have no idea why he's even on the roster. The same thing I would say for
Dwight Howard.
Exactly my point. You look at that roster. I mean, LeBron is a player that he can't wait for draft picks to develop. He can't wait for that. He's a go now guy without a go now squad. So now he's going to get the blame for putting that team together, because all those guys that I named that were older, especially the Carmelo Anthonys and the Trevor Arizas, they can't guard their way out of a paper bag. Once upon a time, Trevor Ariza was a pretty decent defender, a good wing player. Carmelo was never known for defense, but basically he could board a little bit and take up space. You're not getting anything from these guys. These guys are not doing anything that they were doing on the teams prior to them coming to the Lakers. At least if they even bring that type of energy, you get a different mixture with some of the younger players, which they don't have too many. Then there's a couple of guys on the roster that I don't know who these guys are. How do you make it gel? All right, when Anthony Davis should have been the go-to guy this year, he can't stay healthy. And looking at him, I just physically, he needs to get a little bit stronger. I'm just going to be honest with you. He scares nobody on the block. But what he had the year they won the bubble was he had two big players just like him with a little bit of size, and he was able to kind of hide behind them and what they were doing defensively, and even with their rebounding, and him being able to hide behind certain players they had back in the bubble. He was able to get the rebounds, the offside rebounds. He was able to catch blocks because he's the third defender coming to block the shot after the shot is already altered. So he looked like he was Superman. When in essence, it was JaVale McGee, and it was what's this, Dwight Howard. Right. It was particularly them two that held him down. Now he has none of them. He has to be the guy, even though Dwight Howard's on the roster. He has to be the guy, and he's not living up to anything. He
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like honestly with AD, I look at it like right now for this guy. Honestly,
has you in the post and use your jumping ability.
right. No, I mean for me with AD, I feel like the Lakers got the most out of him in that bubble that I think they are going to get. And I say that because this is the difference to me, or one of the differences, in my opinion. Okay, as far as the star players and the superstar players, and it's regardless of the sport. And I say that because, granted, it comes down to the team. Teams win championships, not players or individuals. But also, it takes a special mindset and it takes a special person to win that championship and want to come back and win another and another and another. To my point, Anthony Davis, in my opinion, has not been as hungry for a championship since they won that championship 2 years ago. Because, for some guys, it takes a lot out of them to get to that level, and they just are never able to attain it again. And that's not a knock on AD, that's a reality. Okay. And the thing is like you look at it, LeBron is a guy that, LeBron has 4 championships. He's, with the exception of 3 years of his NBA career, he's always been in the playoffs, 10 finals appearances. But the thing is like, LeBron, wants to be up there with the all-time greats. And he is one of the all-time greats already. But, to try to go back and try to win it again, it's not as easy mentally for a lot of guys out there. And I think Anthony Davis, in my opinion at least, is an example of that. And now you look at it, they didn't make moves at the trade deadline. You're hearing rumors, only rumors, that LeBron is upset with Rob Pelinka over that. But honestly, when you just named the entire roster, what was Rob Pelinka going to get for anybody on that team? The most logical person to trade is Russell Westbrook, but nobody's going to take on Russell Westbrook. So honestly, this is a squad that the Lakers made their bed with. And you know what? They're going to have to try to figure it out for the stretch run of the season and going into the postseason potentially. Uh,
Well, personally, I think I don't see them. I would be surprised if they made the playoffs. That's number one. Uh, Number two, like I said again, I don't see a sense of urgency in winning some of these games. Some of these losses have
yeah, I mean, some of the losses are non-excusable. I will,
when they were somewhere else. And I said this before. But the problem with that is that everybody else is catching up, as far as being youthful and being able to get up and down. And a lot of times you see the Lakers, a lot of them don't even get past half court, going back on defense. They're not playing defense. And there's no way you can win, and they're not rebounding. That's another thing. Only person that's rebounding is Russ. I'm just gonna be honest with you. And until he figures out where he gets in, where he fits in and gets comfortable, he's never been comfortable all year. The Lakers are not going very far with him at all. And I'm not a hater. We're talking about the game itself. A lot of people, know how I feel about certain situations, but in actually watching some
Yeah, it's going to be tough for the Lakers to make some moves. And for
want to
me,
lose that game.
yeah,
So for them to pull out the game they pulled out in Utah after being down 12 with 6 minutes to go and making the comeback, that was pretty impressive. You know what I'm saying? But, those are games where you don't act like you won the championship. That's a game you should have been competitive in and kept yourself in to have a chance to win. That's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, honestly, I'm not sold either which way it goes. I think if they do manage to sneak in, they'll get bumped by a young, hungry team because there's some hungry, hungry teams out there, like you said earlier.
yeah. I mean, for me, talking about Russ has never looked comfortable from day one with the Lakers, and I think the biggest thing right now with Russell Westbrook, he's doing something that makes it so much difficult for an athlete at any level to succeed. Instead of reacting, Russell is trying to think. And that really is a detriment to an athlete because, you wanted to come out there and flow naturally. You want to be able to see things with your eyes, have, your instincts take over. And,
Right.
unfortunately, that's not the case for Russ. He's trying to fit in. People are going to question the shot selection. But the thing is, Russell Westbrook's shot selection, in my opinion, really has not changed since, he's came into the NBA. At this point, Russell Westbrook has been in the NBA for more than 10 years now. So he is who he is. And I think people need to understand that. And, to the Lakers' point, there's no chemistry, there's no cohesion. And I look at a team like the Denver Nuggets, who's like several slots ahead of the Lakers in the standings. No Michael Porter Jr., no Jamal Murray.
Right.
They
Right.
still they still have the reigning MVP in Nikola
And they
Jokic.
look pretty good too.
And you know what? They are going out there and they're competing and they're winning. And if my memory doesn't fail me, I want to say that Denver is currently sixth in the Western Conference standings. And I mean, Jokic is going out there, and usually if he gets a triple double, they win. So it just goes to show you, the system who you put around, your best player and how players, buy into the system and how they respond. And you see it right now. The Lakers, unfortunately, this year have simply not bought into the system of Frank Vogel. You have guys that are like, they're just playing thinking, okay, all we got to do, we're the Lakers, we're going to win. It's not like that. And I watched this team play last Saturday night. They lost to the Golden State Warriors. Close one. They gave a great effort. And I said to myself, I'm like, gosh, if the Lakers play like this
Mhm.
every night, they'd have a
Mhm.
much better chance of winning. They probably have at least 5 or 6 more wins in the win column, to say the least. But to me, that's the other thing. I think the Lakers, they get up for the big teams and they, play down to the level of their competition. And that
Right.
is not something that you can have on a winning ball club.
No, you will lose. I mean, I look at a guy like Julius Randle, for an example. And the reason why he's not having a good year is because he's overthinking, and also he has to share the ball a little bit more with some of the players that the Knicks got. Same thing going on in LA. They want to know, well, who's going to be the number one person. And to me, it's too many. It's this one distraction in LA after the next. And I watched a press conference with LeBron and Anthony Davis the other day, and it just looked like they just was so not serious about what they were saying in regards to the Lakers stinking, because the Lakers stink. And they were trying to agree, I guess, to sort of make try to make the press feel like the press is right. I didn't need both of them to come up there and talk about that they stunk. What I needed them to come up there and talk about is how do you fix it. That's just my opinion on it. And I don't see them. I don't really see them doing too much. They might be able to finish up the year on a good note, but they're gonna have to make some trades and do some things. But then here we go. They have no draft picks, so the Lakers are in trouble.
Oh, big time. And I mean, you look at it, they're ninth right now. And then, you have New Orleans and Portland right behind them. And to their credit, respectively, ever since the trade deadline, New Orleans and Portland, they got younger with some role players. But these guys, and I know they had the trade, and of course, New Orleans has CJ McCollum. But both of those teams that I mentioned, they're playing hard. You look at the way that Portland has responded, under
Right,
Chauncey Billups, these young guys, they're going out there, they're playing hard every night. And the same can be said about New Orleans. I know that New Orleans
right.
lost their last game against Dallas. But my point is, it's like if the Lakers don't wake up soon, they could miss the playing tournament as well. So there, and to your point, there's absolutely no sense of urgency with this team right now, and I simply do not get it.
Again, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. It starts with defensive mentality, getting some dog mentality in you. I've watched LeBron so far, and the few times I've watched the Lakers this year. You know, if your best player is not showing that energy and effort when he misses a shot or when he doesn't get a call, because the Lakers, to me, all year long, even going back to last year, they do too much crying to the officials. You understand what I'm saying? And that time it takes for you to cry to official, you should be hustling back up on the court, regardless of which end. Instead of doing that, you wait until you get a dead ball and you go and explain to the official how you feel or what's going on and so forth like that. Or you let your coach know when you get a chance. But You stopping the flow of what's going on. Meanwhile, y'all are not getting back, and the team you're playing against that you should beat by 30 is now up, and now they're making a run. I sat and watched the team run them earlier this year, 15-2, and watch them miss shot after shot and complain after complaint after every shot. That is the one Lakers. So again, it starts with dog mentality and defense. And if you're not willing to play defense, and this kind of goes back to the assistant coaches on that Lakers team, because those are the guys that when you impress.
Yeah, I would say, you know what? Honestly, at the rate,
What kind of defensive plays you're setting up, your picks, whatever it is you're doing, that starts in practice. So obviously, I'm going to say I don't think the Lakers are practicing much. That's just my opinion.
well, the game, is just, added on to what you see in practice. It's a reality of what you see in practice. And, obviously, what you do in practice is going to translate to the game, regardless of the sport. And we're seeing that right now with the Lakers. I think at the most, this team could get to the first round of the NBA playoffs. But honestly, if they're going to play the rest of the season like they are currently right now, this team is going to be one and done in a playing tournament because you got to get some of these other teams in that
Right,
tournament that are
right.
hungry. The Clippers are hungry. They have a team of role players, but guess what? Those guys are playing like they have 1 year contracts for $1 million. And
Yeah, they
whenever
got respect. Right, right.
and the hungriest dog in the fight is always going to win. So, it's one of those where the Lakers, they better start packing a lunch. And if they don't pack a lunch, hey, it's going to be over sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they're definitely going to lose. I agree.
So there you have it, folks. Want to thank my tag team partner, Cal Wonder God, for joining us to talk about the struggles and the issues that the Los Angeles Lakers have been facing this season. We're going to be signing off. As always, thanks for tuning in to the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. If you liked what you saw and heard today, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. If you're on
Yes, sir.
Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So for Cal Wonder God,
Yes,
this
sir.
is William Martin
Thanks
signing
for having
off,
me.
saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.